February 20th meeting of the Columbia County Planning and Zoning Commission to order. If you'd stand with us, Commissioner Wilder will lead us in our invocation. Commissioner Futch will lead us in the pledge.
How about with me? Dear Lord, we thank you for another wonderful day, rain or not. Thank you for the blessings that you bestow upon each and every one of us, the country that we live in. Ask that you look over those that look out for us here in the community, honors and law enforcement, our military and their broad families that are left here behind. We ask that you look over our proceedings, guide us, and help us to make the best decision, serve the community. Ask all these things.
Flag, United States of America.
Thank you. If I could please remind you to silence your cell phones. We do have 4 or 5 commissioners tonight. Commissioner Dempsey's a little under the weather, so we're going to give him a pass for tonight. Gentlemen, you've had an opportunity to read and review the minutes from the February 6th meeting. If there are no additions or amendments to those minutes, I need a motion for approval or a proposal to change.
Make a motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Motion to approve the minutes passes 4-0. Gentlemen, you also had a chance to review the agenda. If there are no additions to the agenda, I need a motion to approve as submitted.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? To approve the agenda as submitted passes 4-0. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to clarify that the Planning Commission is a recommending body to the Columbia County Board of Commissioners. The decisions made on rezoning and variance requests tonight will be forwarded to the Commissioners for final action on March 3rd, 2020 at 6 p.m. in this chamber. If you wish to address the Board of Commissioners at their meeting, please see Ms. Kara Harden, and she'll give you a request to speak form. We're less formal in these chambers. I see some familiar faces, so you're familiar with the process. Some you may not be. If there is an item in our public hearing that you would like to make a comment on, either for or against, or if there's some additional information you'd like us to consider, please raise your hand. We'll call you up to the dais and give you 3 to 5 minutes to give us that. If you're here as part of a community effort, if you've got a spokesperson that's going to represent you, please let that person come up first, and then we'll follow on from there. You'll also have an opportunity to make comment during the public comment section at the end of the meeting. So if you have something that's not related to one of these particular issues tonight, but you'd still have some information you'd like us to have, please raise your hand. We'll call you up. And again, give us your name and your home address, and we'll be glad to entertain what you've got to say. That being said, we'll go on to new business. I believe, Mr. Butler, we've got 2 massage operator license proposals.
That is correct. The first is Conjure Broomfield, 1105 Ferries Lane. This is for on-premise and mobile massage services. She meets all the requirements of the license.
Okay, gentlemen, do you have any questions of staff? Okay, being none, I'll need a motion to approve, deny, or to table.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve Keandra Broomfield massage license.
Do I hear a second? Discussion? All in favor? Motion to approve carries 4-0. Mr. Butler.
Second one is Rosewater Spa and Wellness Shop at 620 Ponder Place Drive. This is also for on-premise and mobile massage. They meet all requirements of the license.
Okay, gentlemen, any questions? Okay, we'll need a motion the same on this one to approve, deny, or to table.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the massage operator's license for Rosewater Spa and Wellness Shop, massage therapist Jenny Golden, Bill, 620 Ponder Place Drive, and mobile massage services.
Do I hear a second?
A second.
Say that very fast. All right, any discussion? All in favor? Motion to approve carries 4-0. Ms. Bolte, we have a conceptual plan for the Woodlands at Riverwood that has been, the applicant has asked us to table it, but since it's been advertised, we'll conduct the public hearing.
And this is not a public hearing.
I'm sorry, we'll still hear it tonight since it's been advertised.
So this is a concept plan for the next phase of Riverwood. This is off Old Washington Road and Clanton Road. It is part of the Riverwood West PUD planned unit development. This is 166 lots. This is the location of the site. This is the first part of the development on the southwest side of Washington Road. Clanton Road at this point is currently unpaved. That is part of the discussion the applicant is having. That is the reason for the tabling. To what extent that road will be improved. And this is the aerial of the site. It is, of course, currently undeveloped, and the existing conditions map from the concept plan showing the topography on the site and the existing state waters. The plan is for 166 residential lots. Generally speaking, the larger lots are shown in the yellow. They kind of decrease in size as they move down the property, with the smallest lots shown in orange. There's one possible large estate lot shown in red. Sewer service is going to be provided via an easement through Windmill Plantation, and water service is available to the property. There are several parks included in the site, as well as large areas of green space that are not to be developed due to topography and existing environmental conditions. Together, those amount to just over 42 acres, about 44% of the site that will be open space. So the main entrance is going to be on Clanton Road. That road will have to be improved at least to the entrance. The current traffic comments indicate that it will have to be improved at least 1,000 feet beyond the entrance as well. The applicant has also submitted a pedestrian plan. There will be sidewalks within this development. There are some additional connections that need to be made with that sidewalk network that we would expect at the preliminary plat. Sidewalks in front of the park spaces, particularly around those orange lots, making sure they connect to adjacent phases, things like that. Staff was recommending approval of the concept plan, but as noted, the applicant has recently requested to table this application to the next meeting.
Gentlemen, any questions of staff? So we'll need a motion to approve, deny, or to table until 3/5.
Mr. Chair, I move to table item 2C1, conceptual plan for Woodlands at Riverwood till March 5th.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion to table passes 4-0. Ms. Bolte, preliminary plat for Connell Farms.
Yes, sir. This is a preliminary plat for a subdivision off Wrightsboro Road. It is RA residential agriculture zoning, so this is a larger lot development, 26 lots on just over 150 acres. This is on the south side of Wrightsboro Road, currently undeveloped property. This is a bit of an unusual subdivision in that they have elected to utilize the option to maintain a private gravel road. In order to do this, all of the lots have to be at least 5 acres, and these lots meet that requirement. Minimum lot size is exactly 5 acres with an average of 5.87 acres. They have elected to plat this subdivision with a 100-foot front setback, and then they'll have the typical 10-foot side and 25-foot rear setbacks for the RA zoning district. They are showing all their required buffers. They are providing public water to the project, but the lots will have individual septic systems. There are 2 radial lots that do have frontages below the 2/3 allowance. The county engineer has reviewed and approved those lots. Staff is recommending approval of the preliminary plat.
Gentlemen, any questions of staff? This is not a public hearing, so we need a motion to approve, deny, or to table.
Chairman, I make a motion to approve H2D1 preliminary plat for Connell Farms.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Motion to approve carries 4-0. Ms. Bolte, preliminary plat for Quaker Knoll Phase 1.
Yes, sir. This is a preliminary plat for another subdivision off Wrightsboro Road. This one a little bit further east. Was rezoned R2 single-family residential back in 2019, and they are ready to construct the first phase of this, which is going to be on the south side of the creek that divides the property. This will, of course, include the sewer connection down Hamilton Road. Of course, they need sewer to develop the lots. This first phase is 33 lots with a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet, which meets the R2 requirements. They have setbacks 55 feet from the center line of the road, and minimum side and rear setbacks are 10 feet. The property is being mass graded, so you can see the 50-foot buffer shaded along the property lines. This does include the lift station and the force main, and 2.8 acres of open space. Staff is recommending approval.
Gentlemen, any questions of staff? This is not a public hearing, so I'll need a motion to approve, deny, or to table.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the preliminary plat for Quaker Knoll located off Wrightsboro Road.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Motion to approve carries 4-0. Ms. Bolte, we're still with you. Final plat for Anderson Farms.
Yes, sir. This is a final plat for Section 1 of Anderson Farms off Louisville Road. This property is zoned R1, single-family residential. This is the location of the site. You can see the shaded portion. Phase 1 is at the front of the property. This first phase includes 43 lots. Minimum lot size is 43,269 square feet, which meets the requirements for R1. The average lot size is 1.75 acres. Setbacks are 65 feet from the center line of the road, 10 foot from the side property lines, and 25 feet from the rear property lines. They do have buffers on all sides of this property, including the 50-foot buffer required along Louisville Road. This subdivision will have county water, but the lots will have individual septic systems. This is a bit of a unique final plat. It's one of the first ones we're seeing under the 2016 code revisions that is electing to final plat prior to construction being complete. It means they don't have a traditional bond like we've been used to seeing where they're bonding the incomplete construction. Instead, they can get the final plat, but they will not be able to pull building permits for these lots until the construction is complete and the as-bilt's approved.
So they can sell the lots, they just can't build on them.
Correct. So obviously, this is the status of the site as of last week. Not quite done yet with the road construction. Staff is recommending approval.
Okay, I've got one question. Let's say I go in and buy a lot, but they don't complete construction. What happens?
It's a little bit of buyer beware.
The attorneys take care of it?
No, one of the things that we do have is the performance bond amount that we can stabilize, but that's the extent of what the county would be participating in terms of any additional improvements to the site. That is something that as they proceed, if they sell lots prior to completion, those individual home lot buyers will have to be aware that still a stipulation that there is no building permits to be issued. So that'll be something that the current owner, future buyer, and any lending institution involved will have to all take into consideration as part of that
But all that,
diligence period.
so that'll all be documented in a public forum, so they'll be aware of it before they go to closing?
Final plat is.
Okay. Okay. Gentlemen, any questions of staff?
Would there be a time limit?
That's why I asked the question. So would there be any provision to convert, well, I would have to be 5 acres or more to convert to a gravel road, so, okay. Gentlemen?
I guess just real quickly, and not that it's binding or anything, but the applicant or the developer did indicate to me last week, weather permitting, and that's obviously a big if in the current state we're in, that they're, 10 or 12 days out from completion. So it's not anticipated to be a long, drawn-out process. It's just got to get a window of good weather to get out.
Gentlemen, any other questions? Okay. That being said, we'll need a motion to approve, deny, or to table.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the final plat for Anderson Farms located off of Louisville Road.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? To approve carries 4-0. All right, so now we'll get into our public hearing portion of the evening. Ms. Bolte, file RZ 200205.
Yes, sir. This is a request for a rezoning of 2 parcels on William Few Parkway from RA Residential Agricultural to S1 Special for contractors' offices. This property, or properties are located kind of on the northwest side of William Few Parkway in the curve, near Patriots Park and Bartram Trail, and near the 2 quarries on the other side to the west. The property is currently zoned RA. Adjacent properties are also zoned RA. Obviously, Patriots Park is not operating under that zoning, and Bartram Trail is across the street. There is nearby commercial zoning and quite a bit of S1 zoning and industrial zoning further down Columbia Road for the quarries and for similar industrial operations, concrete plants, things like that. And this is an aerial of the properties. This is largely how this request came about. We did receive a business license request for a second business to operate on these properties. In the course of that review, of course, pulled up the aerial of the site and noticed that the existing business appeared to be outside the boundaries of a home occupation. We reached out to the applicant and verified that their existing business had outgrown its home occupation status. They have been operating on the site for quite a while with a business license. We don't have records from their initial application, but we are making the assumption that they were operating legally at that time as a home occupation and have just outgrown that status. They are large enough scale at this point that a provisional home occupation is not an option. So allowing the businesses to continue operating requires a rezoning of the two parcels. So what the applicant is proposing is continued operation of the landscaping business that's on the site, which is Pebble Creek. They utilize one of the storage buildings on the property for equipment storage, and they would like the option to lease to a second contractor's office. Currently, that is Mega LLC, which is a pressure washing business. They also store their equipment on the site. Both businesses have employees that come to the property to pick up that equipment and then leave for the day and come back in the evening, drop the equipment off, take their personal vehicles home. Currently, that's around 20 employees at our best guess. The primary business listed 18 employees with their 2019 business license, and then Mega has employees as well. We did estimate about 20 cars parked on the site on our site visit. So the site plan shows the existing buildings. Parking's primarily just in between the trees. I don't know why our touchscreens aren't working, but there are potential future buildings shown on the site as well for future expansion of this business. We do have a condition proposed that would limit the property to only 2 contractors' offices. So although they may add buildings, that would have to remain with the same or only 2 businesses. There are buffers proposed on all sides of the property, and setbacks would largely follow those in RA that would be similar to the surrounding property development. There is also a potential future use for a small nursery on the site. The applicant already has a small nursery set up for his own use. He's asking permission in the future, if he so desires, to be able to open that up and have some small sales to the public as well. Some photos of the existing site showing the employee parking and the existing buildings and driveways. And access on William Few Parkway. The largest concern is the access to William Few. Currently, there are 4 driveways on the site. Coordination with traffic has resulted in a condition to remove 2 of those driveways, shown in black, leaving just 2 driveways for access to the property, with the intent that eventually county improvements to William Few would result in turn lanes at the southernmost driveway, which lines up with the entrance to Patriots Park. In terms of the future land use map, this is in a neighborhood's character area. Which is of course intended for single-family residential use. The applicant does live on the property, but in many respects, this is operating as an industrial business. It's a fairly large-scale contractor's office. It is near a community crossroads, which are intended to provide concentrated areas of commercial use and services for the surrounding residents. We have in the past allowed storage near community crossroads, which is also a light industrial use, but it is arguably more service-oriented to the residents than a contractor's office is. In many respects, therefore, this does not meet the character area in the future land use map. However, just to the west, we also have the quarries and the existing industrial developments on Columbia Road. So in this case, we would consider there's some existing conditions in this area that are not anticipated by this future land use map and that could support some additional light industrial type use in this location. Staff is recommending approval with quite a few conditions. The health department is requesting that the applicant contact them regarding their septic system on the site. An as-built is requested. This came primarily from code enforcement, but is also a good practice for planning, making sure that the buildings are meeting setbacks and other requirements. The previously mentioned condition, there can be no more than 2 active businesses on these parcels at any given time. Abandonment of that dividing property line to remove some of those setback concerns. A couple of the existing building is fairly close to it, and if we looked at the site plan, we saw one of those proposed future buildings crossing that property line. Getting rid of that property line just removes that concern, and these parcels are effectively operating as, one large operation. We're also requiring supplementation of the buffer along William Few. From some of the street view images from more summertime growing season, it looks a little bit fuller, but right now it is very much, the operations on the property are very visible. So I'd like to see some supplementation of that buffer. And clarifying that RA uses are still allowed on these properties. The applicant does still live on the site, does have some intent to potentially have some livestock on the properties in the future. So he did want clarification that he could still do his normal RA things on these properties. And then traffic engineering wise, mentioned that the driveway locations were a concern. So requiring removal of the 2 driveways within 3 months of approval. That concludes staff recommendation.
Gentlemen, do you have any questions, staff?
Yeah, I have one. Talked about the limit to 2 businesses, but then in the narrative, it talks about opening up a nursery to the public. Wouldn't that require an additional or supplemental zoning?
Since it's already in the narrative, it wouldn't require additional zoning. It can be included under the S1. Business license wise, we'd have to check with licensing. I would think they could fold that under the landscaping license, but it may require a second license for that.
Well, I'm assuming the applicant will come up.
Because that's kind of the question I had, with the conditions limit to 2 businesses. Which business will the potential nursery belong to, the pressure washer or will
I
it
mean,
will
arguably
it have
it
to
would-
be his own a separate LC business?
Is the applicant here this evening? Yes, would you mind coming forward and give us your name, home address, and maybe some clarification of this gentleman's question?
I'm Ryan Kroger, 2248 William Few Parkway.
Say your last name for me.
Kroger, K-R-O.
Okay. All right. Any additional information you'd like us to have, or could you answer the question here about the nursery?
Yeah, so on the nursery, we have a small holding area for our plants that we do install. The future plan, dreams are dreams, but, when we had purchased property to have a nursery plant area, so it'd be still under my business of Pebble Creek, not another business coming in or anything like that, just an operation, what we do.
So this would be for your use, not a public nursery where people come in and buy plants and all that kind of good thing.
We have talked in our business development of Pebble Creek itself to have a retail location, to have plants sell out to the public.
Here or separate location?
I would like to have it on this property. When we bought, we've been here for 7-8 years now. That was the intent.
But it wouldn't be a new business, it would just be
No,
part of Pebble Creek.
it'd still be the
Because your
same.
conditions got you kind of limited right now.
It does. I mean, the reality of the property, before I purchased this property 7-8 years ago, I went and spoke with a lot of people with the Columbia County Board to make sure these were our plans going forward, that we could operate here. And we were told verbally that we could. We've obviously exceeded growth pattern a lot quicker than what we thought we would do, thankfully. So we're here today for this.
Okay. Gentlemen, any other questions?
In your vision for the nursery, something like the, up here southeastern, kind of got a,
I put in my notes, like Sanderlands. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They got a home on their property, and then they have their nursery that they retail, seasonal time frames and stuff like that. So
you would have a parking area in here and then access and build this potential 60 by 100 covered building would be where you would run that business out of?
yes, correct. Well, the covered building would be to store the material and things like that. As far as with your plant material and things like that. My potential covered buildings are more or less for storage of our equipment and things like that. We already have the office space inside our buildings.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, sir. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to speak either for or against this particular rezoning? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and accept a motion to approve, deny, or to table.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve with conditions, file RZ 200205, rezoning the properties at 2240 and 2248 William View Parkway to S1.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Motion to approve carries 4-0. Ms. Bolte, file RZ 200209.
Yes, sir, this is a request for rezoning from R2 Single Family Residential to P1 Professional at 159 South Bel Air Road. This property is located on the west side of South Bel Air, near its intersection with Oakley Perkle Road. It is currently zoned R2. Most of the properties up and down Bel Air Road started out as R2. There's a scattering of professional properties, both north and south of this parcel, including the parcel immediately adjacent to the north. This is an aerial of the site with the existing house and pool. Come up in a minute, the existing house sits quite close to the side property lines and to the road. It'll also be part of the variance request that we'll hear subsequent to this rezoning. The applicants did submit 2 sketch site plans of the site. One of them was largely not feasible with the space available, so we did concentrate our review on this particular sketch. They are showing the building there at the top of the screen, 2 parking spaces under the existing carport, and potentially 3 spaces paralleling Bel Air Road. There is only about 40 feet of space between the building and the right-of-way of Bel Air Road, so in staff's opinion, it's more likely to function with at most 2 spaces in that area, probably not 3 to allow back-out, turn-in space to actually access those parking spaces. This is the existing house on the property. It is the applicant's intent to reuse this existing house, repurpose it for the business. And that is largely the concern with this request. This property is on the Bel Air Road corridor, which is a transitioning professional corridor. So the use itself, the request to rezone it to professional for an office use is not a concern. However, with the location of the house, it is meeting the setbacks. It's 10 feet off the side property lines for R2. That does preclude access to the rear of the property for parking or stormwater detention, right? Well, not really stormwater, but precludes access to the rear for parking. Other properties on Bel Air Road typically have had that access and been able to get the parking behind the building and been able to use more of the site for the development to meet the standards for a P1 property. When they do have parking in front of the building, like that bottom left picture, they are meeting the setback requirement. That building's 125 feet from the center line of Bel Air Road. With this property not being able to do any of these types of development, staff is recommending disapproval of the rezoning request.
Gentlemen, any questions? Is the applicant here this evening? Yes, ma'am. Will you please give us your name and home address and any additional information you'd like us to have?
Good afternoon. My name is Nora Migoni, and I am here for Ana Rivera, who is the applicant. And because of language purposes, she asked me to be here, but she's present. And, well, she is proposing 5 total parking lots in the front part of the building. And she receives clients by appointment only, just 1 client per appointment. And then she sees the client again when their papers are ready for signing. And
this is an accounting business?
It's a tax office, yes. And then she explained me that in total she has around 260 clients, that if we divide it in the 16 weeks of the tax season, that will be around 16 clients per week. She works from Monday to Saturday, so that divided in 6 days, that will be no more than 3 clients per day, 3 cars coming in per day.
Gentlemen, do you have any questions?
Back to the picture of the house. So this grassed area here is where they're proposing to park in?
Yes, sir.
are they going to
Pave parking?
have to pave it, right?
Right, so if the property is approved for the rezoning, that is only the first step in developing this property. They would then have to get an engineer on board to complete an actual site plan with the paved parking, landscaping, stormwater requirements. With this.
Company over here can do landscaping for them.
Yeah. They also have some requirements from water utility to upgrade the utility lines. They'll have to get with health department. There's multiple steps that would go on after the rezoning.
Thank you for setting that up for me. So, and I'm sorry I didn't catch her name. Is she aware of the cost for these upgrades that will be required in order to make the change?
Okay, to the changes that you are mentioning? No, she doesn't have a figure yet. She's just in this working it to see how it would develop.
Gentlemen, any other questions?
Is that a carport or a drive-through?
Where the car is parked, yeah, it is a carport, which takes 2 cars.
There is a wall behind it. They can't drive through there.
So they can't drive through there
No.
in the back?
No, because there's where the office would be.
Oh,
I think to your point, it's not likely that they can get around the side of the carport to the rear of the property. So we're really looking at carport plus the front yard for parking without significant, demolition work.
Because putting asphalt in the front there is gonna be pretty expensive.
To do the parking
To make your
space
parking spaces.
in front of the house where the grass is now.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I mean,
That's
hiring
kinda what
hiring
Chairman,
an
or-
engineer, the consultants, the paving, everything. I mean, there's gonna be a cost to it. So, I mean, I just wonder if that part has been gone over, explained.
We have met with the applicant a couple times now to try and clarify what would be the next steps. We actually met with her earlier this afternoon to discuss the remainder of the rezoning process and what the possible outcomes would be and the results of those outcomes.
Excuse me, do you think we could have a list of all the things that should be done so that she can get an estimate?
There is a list in the staff report she received Friday.
Has it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, any other questions? Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, too.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak either for or against this particular rezoning? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and accept a motion to approve, deny, or to table.
I'd probably table it,
Need a motion?
but come to that, or
We
can we just table it with?
need a motion. Then we can have discussion.
Okay.
Get a second.
I make a motion to table file RZ 200209 until the second. Not the first one, because I don't think that's gonna be enough time. 17th,
And me-
19th,
19th.
March 19th, Planning Commission meeting.
Do I hear a second?
second.
All right, now we can discuss. So you would like for her to be fully aware of the requirements specifically and the costs related to those requirements? Because you just
Exactly.
can't move into a residential house and convert it into a business. There are requirements to convert it to professional.
They may want to
Because-
reconsider.
Is that also a consideration? She's trying to move into the house? Stated publicly?
No. My knowledge. Is this going to be a home occupation? This is
No.
just- This is just an
So
office.
if it was a home occupation, she would not be here in front of you.
Right.
Her business would meet the requirements of a home occupation to operate from the home she was living in. She's not seeking to do that at this time. She wants this to be a business-only location.
So just for the record, I go out and I buy a piece of property on Bel Air Road, and I want to convert it to an office for advertising. What all am I going to have to do?
At minimum, you're looking at adding the landscape strip, adding paved parking, stormwater detention, possibly improvements to the building depending on the use.
ADA compliance?
With the site, you'll require handicap parking. There's a little bit of leniency on the building conversion depending on how much work you actually do to the inside of the building. But with the site upgrades, you'll require handicap parking and handicap access to the building.
Okay.
Yes.
It doesn't cost. Fine, she's got to wait 6 months. Table it, it gives her a chance to kind of, it just,
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Make
Please come
sure.
back forward.
There is a possibility because the house belongs to her son. So it's not in her name, but she would be able to move to the house and live in the house if this is necessary.
That's a whole different matter if she's going to do that. So I think honestly, a table may be the best thing to do so she can get her plans together and decide how she wants to pursue this, get with staff. Because you may be looking, at $200,000-$400,000 to try to convert this office. And it may just not work on that site. But if she's doing it as a home occupation business,
Yes.
she can open up like it is now. To my understanding?
Correct, and that was part of what we discussed with the applicant earlier this afternoon, was if this rezoning was denied, her option would be to operate as a home occupation.
And we're not trying to be a nanny state here, we just want her to again, with the language difference we got here, we want to make sure she understands exactly what these zonings get her if approved or denied.
Yes, she does understand. So if it would be a home occupation, the office could work as it is?
Yes, ma'am, to my understanding.
Yes?
Yes,
So-
the only thing we discussed with her earlier today was the sign would need to come down.
The sign?
Right.
Okay, a smaller sign, she mentioned me. Okay,
So with that, let's discuss the motion, take a vote, and then let you all discuss
yes.
the pros and the
Okay.
cons.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
okay, thank you.
All right, that being said, the public hearing is closed, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor of tabling till the second meeting in March? All opposed? Motion to table till 3/19 passes 4-0. All right, so I guess we need to also hear the variance, or do we need to
Yes, sir.
table that as well?
It's an advertised public hearing also.
Okay, all right, Ms. Bolte, file VA 200202.
Yes, sir, this is the companion variance request. It is variance to sections 9098, which is our list of lot and structure requirements, and 9139 for buffers and screening on the same property at 159 South Bel Air Road. Again, on the west side of South Bel Air near its intersection with Oakley Perkle, and currently zoned R2. Here's the aerial of the site. The existing house sits right around, I think it was 90 feet from the center line of the road, 85 feet from the center line. The P1 zoning the applicant is requesting would require a 125-foot setback from the center line. Part of the concerns that we were just discussing with developing the site stem from the fact that the building is so close to the road and you can't get behind it to utilize more of the site. So in many respects, granting the variance would simply compound this issue. However, it is an existing building, so the other option would be basically to demolish it and redevelop the site completely from scratch. The house also sits 10 feet from the side property lines. For P1 against R2, it would ordinarily require a 20-foot buffer. The house is within that 20-foot buffer, so they're asking on that south property line to reduce that to a 10-foot buffer due to the existing house location. Again, the site plan we saw with the parking in front of the building. And the existing site, this is along the south property line, shows the existing chain link fencing, which would not be sufficient for the buffer. That would have to be replaced with something solid. Staff is recommending disapproval in accordance with the recommendation on the rezoning. If the rezoning is disapproved, the variances, of course, are not necessary.
And with a home occupation, no variance would be necessary.
Correct.
Is This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to speak either for or against this particular variance? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and accept a motion. Approve, deny, or to table.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to table the 200202 March.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Table 319 carries 4-0. Mr. Butler, file RZ 200210, major PUD revision.
Thank you. This is a request out at 701 Navica Drive for a major PUD revision to add a car wash facility without an automatic system. The property is currently zoned PUD, Plan Unit Development. The location of the property is on the south side of Columbia Road, but does share frontage with Long Creek Falls over in the Ivy Falls development. In currently zoned Plan Unit Development, across the street you have Bartram Trail. This is part of Ivy Falls, which was rezoned in, I believe, 96 is when it started. This property here, I can't draw either, was revised back in 2004 for the uses on the property. Those are very broad, allows commercial uses. We'll kind of get into what this request is here in a moment. There's the aerial view of the site, and also the existing site. Again, it's currently a commercial, a lot of commercial businesses on the property. And the plat of the property itself. And this is the area in question. So our code requires you, if you're going to do, this is a request for a car wash without the automatic, without the automatic function attached to it. Our code requires if you're going to have an accessory use as a car wash facility, you have to be able to go in there and pull into it, and it washes the car for you automatically. This is for Enterprise Car Rental. They're looking to add basically a split-face block building with 2 walls with a roof on top of it to allow them to wash their cars in this area of the site. This is not automatic, so it does require us to have a revision to address that. Part of the reason behind that is, again, the very broad narrative on this site allows you to have lots of commercial uses. However, without specifically listing standards for those, it all defaults back to our standards on the site. So in terms of what they're asking, all right, let me show you where they're proposing to put it. This shows, again, this is a very basic sketch, kind of the back of the property. There is some concern with floodplain on the site. There's a condition kind of that goes into that we'll kind of discuss further here in a moment. In terms of what it's going to look like, they have provided us a sketch of the overall view of the proposal. Again, on the sides, you have split-face block. It's supposed to match the rest of the buildings in the site, and a roof on top of it as well. Fairly basic, about 400 square feet in size. It is kind of behind the main building, should be fairly well hidden. In terms of future land use, is within the neighborhood's character area. Again, Bartram or Ivy Falls was there prior to this being in place. And also this commercial area was there as well prior to that. So again, it doesn't, particularly exactly meet the neighborhood's character area. However, this is a small request to revise this PUD. It's not really be an issue from a comp plan standpoint. In terms of the overall request for it, staff is pretty comfortable with it. We do have one condition with the floodplain side of it. They have provided a building itself, and they do have a narrative that kind of specifies more of those design requirements. Again, Environmental has requested, or that we do have a recommendation of approval condition. Environmental has requested that as the building is built, it has to be revision of Chapter 42 of the Columbia County Code of Ordinances. Again, it has to be flood-proof, essentially. It is open on 2 sides, so it should be fairly easy to make happen. That includes staff recommendation.
Gentlemen, do you have any questions, staff?
They're washing cars. Is there environmental impact to that?
So they will have to have a oil and grit separator built within the site itself, so it'll catch everything and take that. It won't just go off into the stream or into the pond behind them. So they do have those concerns. They're aware of that. Any car wash has to have those, no matter what. Again, they can build this in this area, but they will have to do a little extra on the building itself for it to work.
What's the source of the water?
It is going to be attached to the current water supply on the property.
On the main building?
I believe it's coming off of that, yes.
Would hose, or will it?
No, it'll have an actual underground pipe.
Okay.
Enterprise is a tenant, they're not the owner.
That's correct.
If Enterprise leaves, what uses will apply to the building?
again, very broad. They could, it says commercial. Kind of looked at that, and that's a number of things. In terms of what could actually use that little area, it's fairly small. Going to attract probably very similar uses to what are, to the enterprise car rental side of it. Could attract a detailer. Again, it's a small one-bay facility. So that's a question, but it may not be much of a concern. What to say?
Is the applicant here this evening? Yes, sir. Would you like to come forward and give us your name, address, and any additional information that you'd like us to have?
My name's Andy Sharma. I'm here representing the ownership group, which is my family. 701 Kavika Drive. We work with Enterprise Holdings now for months to try to accomplish this, and we feel like we've come up with a pretty good remedy and had a meeting, I'd say 2 weeks ago, with all the departments to overcome the floodplain issues, the oil water separator installation, and I believe in that meeting, we had talked about actually tapping. If you look at all these boxes, where it says Davica Drive, all the boxes there, that's the main water line coming in. So we'd actually tap that for their water source, and we're gonna have to move a fire hydrant out of where the wash bay is going, just so the fire department has a code where they want it visible.
Mr. Sharma, would this become square footage that you would rent to a future tenant that would go with that, or would that be separate? How, let's just say Enterprise goes away, what happens?
There's probably multiple uses for it,
Okay.
depending on the tenant that comes in.
Right.
Or, come back and probably enclose it and use it for another purpose, whether it's storage or,
And that would probably require an additional rezoning depending on the use? No?
No, again, it's so broad, no.
Okay, all right. Okay. Gentlemen, any questions? All right, thank you, sir. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here that'd like to speak either for or against this particular rezoning? Yes, sir. Please come forward, give us your name and home address.
Hi, TJ Watkins, Columbia, South Carolina, Fair Harbor Court. And I'm representing Enterprise Rent-A-Car, so just thank you for hearing us. We are just looking to add one of our branches. We have many branches throughout Augusta area here. It's growing, and a couple of body shops have moved out there, and right now, the citizens there, residents, are having to be serviced from our Washington, Bobby Jones Highway, so we just closer to are out there. So we appreciate it. It's a standard wash, just like we have in many of our other locations that already exist in Columbia. Environmental compliance, and we just hand wash. I think our thing here is the automatic wash. We have it at an airport location due to the volume, but these smaller branch locations don't warrant the cost and automatic type. We just appreciate your consideration. I can answer any questions.
Gentlemen, any questions?
How many cars?
These branches typically, and we don't know until we actually get out there, but they'll typically run anywhere between about 100 vehicles.
Those aren't parked out there.
Oh, no. They're on rent. They're not making money, they leave. They're on rent.
So, if I'm a resident and I'm thinking, okay, well, how many cars are gonna be parked in that parking lot? Typically, what?
Oh, it probably averages about 5 to 10, something like that. We stay about 90% occupied.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah, who washes the cars?
Who washes them?
I mean, is it a staff member?
Yeah,
Do you
yes,
have a
sir.
contractor that comes in when you call them, or
No, sir, it's the staff. We hire a person.
you have a car washer on staff?
Yes, sir.
Questions? All right, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone else here that'd like to speak either for or against this particular rezoning? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and accept a motion to approve, deny, or to table.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve with condition file RZ 200210, request for major PUD revision at Ivy Falls.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Approved carries 4-0. Ms. Bolte, file RZ 200212, major S1 revision.
Yes, sir. This is a major revision to the S1 special zoning at 4600 Columbia Road. The property is currently split zoned. They are not requesting to change that at this time, so we're only looking at a portion of the S1 zoned piece of the property. This is the next phase of Wimberley, which is a senior living community on Columbia Road. It is on the south side of Columbia Road, surrounded primarily by neighborhoods, except for the county park to the southeast of the site. Again, it is split zoned S1 and R2. We are only looking at the S1 zoned piece tonight. The two R2 pieces are to remain zoned that way. This is the aerial of the site showing the undeveloped portion there in the southwest corner. That is the subject of the revision tonight. And an aerial view of the site. So the original zoning for Wimberley was in 1985, and they did adopt this site plan with that zoning. This showed lots all the way to the property line, essentially, so there were no buffers established with that zoning. And they set a typical lot size of 80 by 100 feet. They were primarily essentially placing mobile homes parallel to the roads. With the revision, they are turning those lots so they are narrower and deeper, and the mobile homes sit perpendicular to the roads. According to the applicants, this is a more desirable layout for their residents. They like how this functions better. So the proposed plan includes 59 lots that are mostly 55 feet wide and 110 feet deep. These won't be subdivided lots like we see in a lot of our subdivisions. They're more leased spaces. Wimberley is all one parcel and will remain that way. We do still have a couple lots that are parallel mobile home sites. Those are 110 feet wide and 70 feet deep, and that primarily occurs where the development butts up against some steep topography or other existing lots. With this revision, the applicants have defined setbacks and buffers, which is an improvement, in our opinion, on the 1985 narrative, which did not clarify that as quite as well. So there is a 15-foot undisturbed buffer proposed against the Red Oak neighborhood to the south, and then a 20-foot setback from that buffer. So the nearest building would be actually 35 feet from the property line. We have also proposed a condition clarifying that with S1 against the residential, it is a 30-foot structural buffer requirement. So although only 15 feet of that may be undisturbed, they would be required to plant another 15 feet and then have the privacy fence in there as well to meet that requirement. There were GIS numbers assigned previously with the 85 plan. Those will be revised with the new plan. This is the existing site at Wimberley. And this is from the Dewey Drive side, and I do want to clarify, they are not planning to connect to Dewey Drive with this revision at all. But this gives you an idea of the existing tree cover on this property. In terms of future land use, this property is in the neighborhoods character area, which is primarily for single-family neighborhoods. This property is largely in line with the intent of that character area. They are single-family residences, and the property is already zoned S1 for the mobile home development for the senior living community. The density is approximately 4 units per acre on this section, so it is in line with the target density for this area. The base zoning, the S1, already allows densities up to 5 units per acre, so it is in line with the existing S1 as well. And staff is recommending approval with that buffer condition, just clarifying that it will be, when all is said and done, a 30-foot structural buffer.
The 85 plan is approved, and they could do that now without
Yes, sir.
any questions asked.
Yes, sir.
They came to staff. How did we arrive here from
There-
the 85 plan to this?
They're mainly looking to have those changes to the lot sizes. So the main purpose of this revision is to change the orientation of those lots to allow there are slightly smaller lot sizes also, but it primarily was for the orientation. The request in 14 revised this section, but also rezoned the property in the southeast that's still R2. If I can find the zoning map again.
They wanted connectivity too.
That
didn't
would
they?
have had a connection to Dewey Drive. That request was disapproved.
Because of the, well, it was,
So they're not asking to rezone that piece tonight. We're just dealing with the revision to the existing approved site.
That was approved in 85.
Yes, sir.
And since it was an S1, any changes would require this
Yes, sir.
process.
Questions of staff? Is the applicant here this evening? Yes, sir. Would you like to come forward and give us any additional information? Please give us your name and home address.
Scott Griffin, 40 Morrison Street, Marietta, Georgia. Just like Ms. Danielle said, we're just trying to reorganize the site with the new layout. Sorry, third try. In addition, trying to add some additional stormwater to meet the stormwater requirements of today's standards. Staying out of any floodplains, all the stream buffers, and not looking to use the R2 connectivity section.
Any questions? All right, thank you, sir. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone that'd like to speak either for or against this particular rezoning? Okay, yes, ma'am. We'll go with you first. Come forward and give us your name and home address.
I live at 254 Ashbrook Drive, Martinez, Georgia. I'm right up against that. We are opposed it. I have taken a petition around the neighborhood. We have 67 signatures. And we are all concerned with the general things that this original expansion was proposed in 1985. Things have changed greatly since 1985. In 1987, Federal Freshwater Wetland Protection Act was passed. In 1992, Red Oak Farm was built. That was not there in 1985, so there wasn't a flooding problem. Currently, there is a red-cockaded woodpeckers living in those woods. They are a federally endangered and protected form of wildlife, as are the wetlands. Wetlands are important, even though someone could look at them and say they're dry. Definition of a wetland is that it doesn't have to be wet all year long. It just has to serve a particular function. And this woodland does that when it gets wet. Wimberley is on higher ground than all of the Red Oak Farm. As it is now, we do have flooding issues. If they remove this wooded wetland from behind Red Oak Farm, we are going to have problems. Wimberley is higher. The living trees that form the wetland hold the soil in place. The fallen trees and the ground clutter act to slow, divert, and trap the water so it doesn't come rushing down on us. Obviously have to clear cut this thing to put in mobile homes. Freshwater wetlands are vital to Columbia County's growth because they keep the water from running away along the surface and gives it time to sink into the ground. They purify water, harbor wildlife such as the endangered woodpecker. They provide flood protection for the area, and most important, it replenishes the aquifer. Columbia County's growth is requiring more and more water. We should be setting aside wetland areas to refurbish the aquifers. There are no paved roads in this area that they're proposing to build on. It is a small enclosed area that would be ideal as a protected wetland and as a refuge for the endangered red-cockaded woodpecker. Please consider altering not only the current zoning permit, but the original one to make this area a protected freshwater wetland site and a sanctuary for this endangered bird.
With that, ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to yield the microphone.
Pardon?
I'm going to have to ask you to yield the microphone. We've got a gentleman behind you that'd like to speak as well.
Oh,
All right, thank you, ma'am.
oh, and we did have, I'm sorry, there was one thing I missed. We had some questions for the developer.
Okay, and
Has
we're
the-
gonna have to quiet that, and I'll direct you to him so you can ask the questions
All right.
directly, as opposed to doing it here. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir. Familiar.
Good evening, sir. My name is Robert Langford. I live at 4574 Pintail Court. My property backs up along the fence line of this proposed rezoning. I'll condense some of my notes, but I thought just as a thing, I don't know if any of y'all been here 30 years or not.
A little longer.
At one time, we called it New Horizons. When I first came out to Columbia County 40 years ago, I think, if I remember correctly, Bel Air Road and Columbia Road, and on over here at Washington Road, Bel Air, it was a little more than a country crossroads. Look at us now. Goodness. My opinion, I think we're already overtaxing our two major arteries, Washington Road and Bel Air Road out to I-20 and Gordon. Based on what I'm seeing here tonight, I think we are seriously going to continue to overtax them. But my major concerns, I have three. First is flooding. Currently, my property, we get a gully washer. Us country folks, that means when it really rains. I get water on my back porch. Granted, it's only maybe a quarter of an inch or so. When you allow through this rezoning to clear that hill, I'm going to get flooded. And others along that fence line as well. I believe Mr. Lamb wants to address and has some additional information as far as the current runoff. Linda's already spoken to the endangered species, so I won't go into that. I'm also concerned with our property values. What this expansion behind us is neighbors or potential new buyers drive through our neighborhood. What are they going to think when they, excuse me, that microphone, when they see 59 mobile homes as their view? Our property values are certainly going to take a hit. I would, and I can't speak for all the residents in Red Oak Farm. However, I was the past president of the HOA the past 3 years, so I'll use this liberty. Basically, what we're asking from you all is, we'd like to see, of course, a show of hands. How many of you commissioners would actually vote, have this in your neighborhood?
Can't do that, sir. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and address your points, please.
But I would say that as residents, there's 94 of us in there. We're deserving of due process. We're entitled to a vote. I recommend to the board that you seriously consider what you're about to do. Because it's
Sir, I would take exception to that because we're not about to do anything. That was done in 1985. We can't change that.
Obviously, we can, sir,
No, sir,
because
we
Red Oak
cannot.
Farm
Sir,
was
Mr.
not
Sterling,
existing.
Could we arbitrarily change this zoning tonight and remove what was passed in 1985?
No, you as the planning commission certainly cannot, any decision that the planning commission makes tonight would be a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. Only they would have the authority to change any zoning, and that would be through the public hearing process.
And hypothetically, let's say they did. We dealt with this same issue with some apartments over by River Island, that zoning was done back in 2002. And they asked for us to basically take that zoning away from them.
Right.
What happens, what would be the result of that?
Hypothetically speaking, if the county were to take away their vested right, subject to possible lawsuits, the applicant would have would have pretty good standing to consider suing the county for removing that vested right that they already were entitled to.
Okay. So we could be subject to
Lawsuit.
damages, attorney's fees, both ours and theirs.
And if found in favor of the applicant, they could actually build what they're already approved for, and we would be subject to damage claim.
So
Potentially.
that's one of the things we have to consider here is not just the point of view of the people involved, but the overall county and the exposure we have to the county. Because I can remember one time that this body recommended to the Board of Commissioners to approve a particular project. They saw fit to deny that project. We went to federal court and we spent $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in attorney's fees and lost. And we had a lot of discussion on the pros and the cons of either approving that project or denying it. And it was our opinion, and again, we're just a recommending body. The commissioners are the ones that make the final decision. They're elected, we're not. So they're the ones that are gonna take the heat at the ballot box. We're just appointed folks that come in here and spend a little bit of time, trying to volunteer and help how we can. But we're tasked to do two things: to try to be a good steward of taxpayers' money and try to avoid getting the county in a position to have a lawsuit, and to gather information. Because the commissioners, how many folks have been to a commission meeting? Okay, have you ever seen them have discussion like this before at a commission meeting? So that's part of our job, is to get public comment and our comment. Because, we've all lived in the county a good while. I've been here almost 36 years. So, and these gentlemen have been here not quite as long, but they have been around and they've seen the explosive growth you mentioned. But we're also tasked with gathering information for the commissioners to consider. So regardless of this recommendation tonight that we come up with, they'll hear what you say and they'll take that into consideration. And then it's going to be up to them to decide whether or not they want to do anything with this zoning. And I can honestly tell you, I've been on this board for going on 13 years, and I've never seen us arbitrarily go in and change a zoning like this. So I don't know if anybody else has any comments to that effect.
That's the thing, it's already zoned. The applicant, because of the type of zoning it is, can't make any changes without coming through here.
Right.
But a plan with more trailers, mobile homes, modular homes, is already approved. He's gonna scale it back. There's
Now-
not gonna be as many under this new plan.
I will say that if you're getting runoff now, this may be a prime opportunity to remedy that situation. And so I would get with Stormwater and with the developer and voice your concerns, and maybe they can mitigate that and eliminate that problem for you. Would that be reasonable?
I think that's fair to say. I think, one of the things to keep in mind is this does require an engineered site plan, and as part of that, they do have to, comply with all of the local, state, and federal requirements that would be applicable. And so as part of this process, assuming they get through the rezoning modification, they'll have to do an engineered site plan. This is the starting point of that process. So you can tell by this stormwater management pond that's in the far left corner that they're already taking into consideration some of the issues that have been addressed here by the public, but also by the Planning Commission tonight.
Okay.
So hopefully through this process, with the public input, there's going to be even more forethought in taking that design to ensure that there's not runoff onto adjacent properties and things of that nature. Now, there's no guarantees that, some catastrophic event doesn't occur and get a little bit of flooding here and there. We all do as part of, natural events. But generally speaking, this is going to be, better contained on their property as a result of, new engineering and better engineering techniques of modern era rather than a couple decades ago.
If I understand you correctly, sir, you're basically saying that since this was decided in 1985, that us 94 residents in Red Oak Farm basically have no say, mean nothing to the county? I mean,
That's not what we're saying at all.
we pay taxes just like everyone else does, sir.
I understand that, and so do they.
Mr. Langford, basically what you're asking to do would be the equivalent of us going to your home and making a change at your home without having, basically changing the zoning of your home or the makeup of your home as a government entity. That's not a feasible event in any case, shape, or form. So I think what the chairman was saying is that it's been approved already. What they're doing is they're coming back and they're trying to improve on what was already improve what was already approved. So I think that's what we're voting on, is whether or not to allow the improvement, not whether or not this can be done. That's already been decided. We as a body, I'm pretty sure as a government, can't just arbitrarily come to your property, tell you that you have to do a certain thing on your property. Your property is zoned a certain way, and it's for that use. This property has been zoned a certain way for that use.
For the sake of not arguing with you, not hogging the podium here, I would only say you certainly can do what you say, because tax commissioner can change the tax structure on any of our houses.
Oh, he can change the tax structure, but he can't change the zoning.
He can change
I
the
would
use.
just ask-
He can't change the use. He can change the value, but he can't change the use.
I would just ask that you all place your vote based on the fact that you're living in our community and consider the impact from there.
All right.
One last point. Is there really a critical shortage of senior housing?
Yes.
And there is?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I find that odd. I get probably every other month, I get an invitation from Brandon Wild to please come and check them out and consider living there.
There's been quite a bit of conversation about the shortage of senior housing in Columbia. Thank you,
Sir,
sir.
with that, I'm going
Thank
to
you,
have
sir.
to ask you to yield the microphone.
Pardon, sir?
I'm going to have to ask you to yield the microphone because we've got other
I'll
folks.
leave. I can tell we're not wanted, so thank
Well,
you.
sir, no, sir, that's not the fact at all. Yes, sir. Please give us your name and home address.
My name is Paul Lamb. I live at 4584 Pintail Court. I brought some pictures that I wanted to show you that I think more clearly demonstrate my concerns. If I could hand them to you. I only brought 4 copies.
We can share. We'll share.
The first is a Google overhead of a wide shot showing the current wooded area bordering Red Oak Farms. For reference, Blanchard Park is visible on the right side of the photo, and 4577 Pintail Court is labeled on the bottom. The next picture is a close-up photo of the same area there. What follows is an overlay of the planned development. So as you can see, all that wood line would disappear. Right now, from my backyard, about every morning that I look out there, there's some deer that runs through. That's I've enjoyed that for 20 years, and it was one of the reasons I moved out there. Of course, in 1985, when this was approved originally, when this happened, there was none of that. There wasn't a subdivision. I could not have lived there unless I bought a lot and put up a tent at that time. Now, the next photo shows the current water runoff between my house and the house next door, between 4582 and 4584 Pintail Court. And it shows the water comes from the Wimberly property now. When I got to my back door, I look up and I see the Wimberly property. Very steep incline. And the next photo, the last photo, shows the water runoff on either side of my house at 4584 Pintail Court. And you'll note the very heavy runoff to the right side of the house next to the fire hydrant. To the rear of that runoff is a current floodplain, which on that diagram is on the right-hand corner, bottom right corner. That's also a retention pond of sorts. So as it stands right now, there's a severe flooding issue from the uphill property, which is Wimberley. If you pave all that, if you clear all those trees and you clear all that land and you put in driveways and houses and roofs and streets, my problem is going to quadruple. Now, maybe that's something you can't do anything about, but I'd be remiss if I didn't call your attention to the county ordinance 90-182. Subsection 2 requires that the development plan include other information necessary for the substantive and environmental review of the project. I haven't heard a word about that.
And Mr. Sterling, at what phase of this project would that happen?
I think it's fair to say that preliminary review has probably been a part of this initial application. Final site plan review and approval will include all of the various departments that the county does in their review. Environmental and stormwater have already been part of the conversation and certainly have a part of this review moving forward. I think it's also fair to say that they're aware of any conditions that exist in this area and would be actively in discussions, and part of their review comments would include items to remedy the situation that occurs on that site, whether that's current or any development-related conditions that would be anticipated as part of the plan that they show here. So stormwater environmental services, I'm sure, are all in the loop on this and have no doubt been a part of the conversation thus far and will continue to be.
Can you make sure that they get copies of those photographs so they can add those to the
We have a
record?
copy for the file.
Okay, great.
And I also made an application to speak for the March 3rd commission meeting. I think I sent those pictures. Well, I
Okay.
know I
And
sent
I'll
some.
make sure that the district commissioner has those.
So that's, and there's also another part of the ordinance which also addresses, subsection C2 addresses the maximum impervious surface ratio for individual lots and the development as a whole. Now, and I realize your hands are tied that this was approved in 1985 before anybody developed Red Oak Farms. But I do want to stress, and I speak on behalf of a lot of people in Red Oak Farms, that you do have the ability to at least put a pause on this or have your concerns or our concerns expressed in this. This is where I've lived. This is my home. This is a place I want to pass down to my children and grandchildren down the road. I've been there 20 years. And I'm not looking forward to looking out in my backyard and seeing 30 or 40 trailers behind my house. I'm not looking forward to that. And even with a privacy fence, they're still on higher ground. So even if they put the privacy fence there, you would still see that property. The grade is very steep. That's our concerns. Now, of course, if we were uphill and they were downhill, it might not be a problem, but the reverse is true. And so along with that, we've been very fortunate. I love living in Columbia County because we've been very fortunate in that our property values have been increasing in the 20 years since we've been there. But I'm afraid what happens here is when a potential buyer looks and instead of a big, nice wooded area with deer and hawks and owls and squirrels and chipmunks and everything else running around back, instead there's going to be a bunch of trailers. There are other areas of Columbia County you can go to if you want to live right next door to a trailer park, and this area isn't one of them. That's why we picked it. I appreciate your time and consideration.
Thank you.
I would urge
A
you
question about the
find this.
runoff, though. Is
Pardon
that-
me?
The runoff pictures you gave us, that's, pretty bad.
It is,
Has it been that way since you moved there? Because
Yes.
Wimberley predates your neighborhood.
yes.
So it's always been a problem.
When we have what my neighbor called gully washers, that's what we get. And since we've had rain for 2 weeks, my backyard, I have trouble keeping a backyard there. I mean, fortunately, we have enough dry time to where I can do something with it, and I can do some other things, but, if they develop all this stuff here, there's nothing I'll be able to do. There's no way in the world. Look, engineering's fine, I get that, but you can't change topography. You can't unless they're gonna reduce the whole level of it, or dynamite, or blow it up, or do something like that, there's not a whole lot they can do about that runoff. I mean, that's, what's up's got to come down, and what's paved doesn't soak in water. Thank you
sir.
for your time.
Is there anyone else that'd like to speak either for or against this particular rezoning? Yes, sir. So we'll take you two gentlemen. I think the applicant wants to come back up one more time, then we'll close the public hearing.
Hi, my name is Gary Freeman, 4580 Pintail Court, Martinez, right here, backyard backed up against those woods and everything. So as Mr. Lamb just stated, yes, there's deer back there. I'm not sure where they're going to migrate to at this point. And again, the flooding is an issue. Actually, I'm getting it most of my front yard. As it all washes down, my yard is turning into roots. And so I'm like, what am I going to do about this, you know? But, and I think the problem would just get worse. So, but one thing, and I know that Mr. Sterling had mentioned, and there was saying something's in process, there was kind of some vagueness about what's being looked into. Number one, has Wimberley Group done a threatened and endangered species survey and obtained the required permits from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services?
They have not done that survey at this time, but they will before site plan approval.
Okay, because that's something that I think is important to be done. And I know we've talked a little bit about this, but also it has, and would this be the U.S. Corps of Engineers, Army Corps been consulted for permits obtained about the possible flooding problems and the wetland protection issue if this project?
With the change in the statutes regarding waters of the United States, the Corps probably would not be involved in this now.
Okay. Just
Because
wondering.
there was a change not very long ago that has to do with navigable waterways, and if something is casual water and infrequently wet, they're not looking at it the same as they have in the past. That was changed recently so that it's easier for, and I believe it was pretty much done for the farming community, honestly, so that farmers, when they're trying to plow fields and that kind of thing, they don't get in trouble with the Corps of Engineers for that very reason.
Okay. Yeah, so if it can be looked into at all, if there's some organization or group that looks into that, that would be helpful, because we're all not, just making this up, we're all having backyard water issues, and we all feel that they're gonna get worse, so. Those are one, and another thing I wanted to ask, do we know how tall the privacy fence is gonna be?
County code requires it to be at least 6 feet.
6 feet. All right, I was thinking more along the lines of 10 would be nice, but, so these are all our same concerns. I mean, the wildlife is there, they come through our fences, the turtles, the deer run back there. It's a lot to be lost, and yes, we kind of sort of drank the Kool-Aid from, I think you would say, possibly lying realtors when we looked at the property, and it still says on there that this property can never be built on behind you. And ours, actually, if you go on and look up our property, it still says that on there. So we said, hey, that's great, because this is perfect, and it was that perfect little country place for us to move. We were from Illinois, and now the whole thing is changing. We're thinking, is our property value going to go down? Likely, probably so, because it's just been rising, and that's been exciting to see the property value rise. And now we have this threat of possibly losing that. And now we have to be thinking, I love living here. Do I have to consider now moving somewhere else? And should I get out of here before the property value declines? So again, these are the concerns about all of us here. That's why we're here together, a wonderful group of people. But so that's what I have to say today. Thank you all very much.
We appreciate you coming out. And yes, sir. You'll give us your name and home address, please.
My name is Gil Nedwick, and 121 Sheldon Drive, in Wimberley. And I agree with a lot of these people that are against any changes being made because of the nature of it and everything else. And I want to add to it on the fact that currently we can't even get adequate water pressure or anything else to our units all the time. Just 2 days ago, we had the water shut down again. It's every time we're getting a call about water problem. They cannot provide us with water. And then when they work on these pipes and everything else in that community, they don't flush them out. And then we get different kinds of smells and things in the water itself because they are in control of the water of this program. Somewhere along the line, they opted out of going in with Columbia County, although they buy water from Columbia County. But in the development itself, there's not adequate things being done concerning that. Another concern that hasn't been mentioned, because I agree with all these people back here. I'm against any development. I don't care what happened in '85. We're not in '85. We're in 2020 now. We need to look at it under the new ideas of preserving land and everything else, and also the traffic that's going to be created on Columbia Road coming out of this development is probably, going to double. Plus, on the other side, we have a smaller development that's already been in there. And the way the road is set up to come in and out of there, all of a sudden you're on a road that you're going to turn into Wimberley, and the people on the other side are coming out and trying to use that suicide lane in the middle and come right at you because that's their out. And so that structure of where it was put and everything else is not adequate for what we have. And if you wanted to see what the traffic problem is, you could have rode in here with me tonight because we were backed up for a long, long time to get to the light and then turn left, start coming here off of Columbia Road. And that intersection already is probably one of the most dangerous intersections we have in Columbia County based on the amount of activity and accidents and things of this sort that are going on. So I think Wimberley should, the new owners, these are new owners that are coming in, and they want this to be implemented. They have to do a deal with the roads, the water situation that exists in Wimberley. They're both below a standard that I think we would consider acceptable. So I think, we ought to really look at making sure that what we have is working good and doing what it should do, and we have adequate, flood control and all the rest of the things that people said today. Plus, I love those woodpeckers.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. And Mr. Griffin? Yes, sir. We'll let you go, and then we'll end.
I'll be very brief. My name is Josh Knockenberg, 333 Valley Drive in Zeeland, Michigan. I'm here with Sun Communities, the relatively new owners of Wimberley. While new to Wimberley, we're not new to the manufactured home industry. We are a nationwide leader in this industry. We have about 423 locations nationwide. I'll keep my comments pertinent to the approved development as it is, and I think Scott will touch on some of the improvements we're looking to make as far as the drainage and buffer as to what was already approved back in 1985. Just to answer any questions or concerns as to the existing water, completely unrelated to this project, there is a major water line replacement project that is in the proposal phase right now, and we're actually looking to replace water lines in much of the existing community. So that is underway. Wanted to note as well that my notes take Wimberley back to something like 1972. So while I haven't been involved in the community for that many years, Wimberley has been providing quality manufactured affordable housing for many number of years. As was noted earlier, we see significant demand for quality housing. Trailer park is not a term that I use. We provide high quality manufactured housing, as I think the homeowners here would attest to. While we are a gated community, I'd invite everybody to come out and take a look and see what it is we do at Wimberley, because it is a very nice quality of living that we provide. Again, I think Scott will touch on many of the other items. Part of this is the improvement of the buffer zone and the drainage, as has been discussed this evening. As far as the impact on the local market, it has not been my experience to see any impact on neighboring homeowner values. We bring high-quality residents to our high-quality community, and we believe that we are an asset to this area. I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have, especially in regards to the day-to-day operations, which is really my realm.
Questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So, Mr. Griffin, we'll end with you.
Provide some responses to some of the issues that were brought up tonight. As far as the big one that seemed to be out there, the grading and the drainage, if anything, we'll be improving the grading and drainage that will be released onto the neighbors. That's pretty much what this stormwater pond is for. It's there to collect all of the runoff from this proposed area. It's going to be conveyed in the stormwater pond and released per the regulations to the neighboring waters. And as far as the wetlands go, we're staying out of any of the wetlands. We'll keep them just as hydrated as they are now. We're not going to overhydrate them. We're not going to dry them out. Tree mitigation will be, mitigating per the county's requirements for all the trees that come down. Just like it was said, we're actually improving the buffer width between the neighbors and the proposed lots along that property line, leaving the 15-foot undisturbed buffer, and then adding an opaque fence, privacy fence. Right now it's just a chain link fence. And then as far as the woodpecker goes, we do have a environmental study that is in the proposal phase. It'll be getting underway shortly, and we'll be following any rules and regulations for whatever we find out there on site.
Gentlemen, any questions? Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing and accept a motion to approve, deny, or to table.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion, but based on what Mr. Griffin just said, I want to add a condition to the motion. I make a motion to approve with existing conditions, but I want to add, prior to approval, any site development plans, environmental study taking into account information from the United States Fish and Wildlife Services regarding any endangered species shall be provided for review by Columbia County.
Okay, so the motion is to approve with the additional condition. Do I hear a second? Existing conditions with this additional condition. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Motion to approve carries 4-0. We have no text amendments. We have no legal matters. Do we have any staff or commissioner comments?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I hear the concerns of the neighbors and the enjoying the wildlife, but the thing that I ask everyone to consider when these things come up, I'm an outdoors person. I'm a big contributor to Ducks Unlimited. I believe in saving wetlands whenever possible. The problem in this instance is you're asking a man who owns the land to leave the trees there so that you can enjoy the animals you see on his land. And I just ask that folks be considerate of another property owner's rights, and that's the difficulty we run into, is whose rights come first. And it's not necessarily a game for me of who was there first, because they were in this case, but, and I sympathize because I live somewhere where I had to move because it got graded and trees cut. And luckily, I didn't see the awful flooding y'all have seen, but it's just something I ask folks to consider before they come before us, to tell us about something they enjoy on somebody else's land that's their land. And I don't want to tell you what to do on yours, and I'd ask you to have the same consideration for me or anyone else in Columbia County that owns a piece of property. And in his case, he's just wanting to make a little bit better plan of what he's already got approved to do. That's just something I'd like to throw out for the folks to consider in the future.
To echo what Commissioner Wilder is saying, this is a, again, I've been doing this for a long time, and not to bore you with that, but one of the things that we run into are things that folks did a long time ago. Commissioner Gray was chairman back in the mid-'80s, and every now and again we get to poke fun at him for us having to clean up decisions they made way back then. And not Commissioner Gray, but Commissioner Al Dempsey. Got Al Gray confused with, yeah, in Lincoln County. But we've got a new Vision 2035 plan that we're going to be putting forward and asking for public input. One of the things that we've discussed, and I've had lots of discussions with commissioners and with the planning staff and these commissioners, is what do you do with property that was zoned 10 or 15 or 20 years ago? And how does it factor into the comp plan? When you approve something, do you put a time limit on that? You know, would that stand up in a court of law? If we approve some apartments to go in a particular development, say we go out to the gateway and approve apartments. Somebody goes for 10 years and they don't build on it. Do you have a time window where you can go back in and reconsider? Or if somebody has a larger development that they partially develop but they don't fully develop, are there caveats we can put in there? As we sit now, we don't. Unfortunately, I can tell you from experience, I wish we had, because I think we could have some different developments and some better developments, but we're constrained with the laws and the ordinances that have been put on with us now. That's not to say they can't change in the future. So I would encourage you to come out and get involved in the conversations and ask hard questions, not just of us, but of the elected officials. Ask hard questions of staff and find out if there are things that we can do to help improve the county. Because when I moved here 35 years ago, there were 35,000 people lived in the county. And believe me, this place has changed. I'm sure some of you all have been here a lot longer than that. And I can sympathize with the gentleman getting out of Wimberley. My office is right in that area, and I have to fight it every day. And so, again, I wish we could get road projects that move faster. From when they're approved, they take, an average of 7 years before they start turning dirt.
From thought to conception to completion is closer to 10.
Yeah, so there's a lot that goes into it, and unfortunately, none of it happens fast. But the thing that we appreciate more than you know, even if regardless of which side of any of the positions you're on tonight, is you all showing up and giving us your input, because without that, we can't plan for the future. And again, I invite you to come out, watch for the sessions being advertised, and come out and get involved, because that's the only way that we can continue to make the county the place that folks from across the country want to move to. So with that being said, we'll open up for public comments. Okay, seeing none, I'll accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion to adjourn at 7:37. Next meeting is at 6 p.m., March 5th, in these chambers. Thank you very much for coming out.